Hello and welcome, lovely viewers. I am Luna, the founder of Vegan Bloomers, and today we have our next star vegan, which is another friend of mine. Let's welcome Jenny. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've caught up with all your episodes and I'm loving what you're doing, Luna. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. So let's begin with where you're based, how old you are, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right. So my name's Jenny. I'm 46 and I live in Folkestone, but I'm from Essex originally. So I'm... Sometimes my Essex shows a little bit more than other times. But yeah, I'm married with one grown-up son. And I moved my parents down at the beginning of COVID. So I've gone from just being myself and my husband while my son was off in China to having an absolute house full again. I run a little biz as well in creativity and well-being. So I run several women's circles and I co-host a pagan podcast.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Jenny. So let's begin with your vegan journey. So when was it that you turned vegan and what was it that got you there?
Well, I started being vegetarian. So I was veggie from about the age of 11 and my mum still thinks it's a phase and that I'm going to grow out of it. As I said, I'm 46. So it's a long phase.
Brilliant.
And I think what had got me going veggie was, you know, when you do debate at school and we'd watched a documentary and we were having a debate about whether it was ethical to eat meat or not. And doing the research, I kind of felt, no, it doesn't really resonate with me. And actually, I think I wanted to go veggie when I was even younger, when I'd made that connection that the chicken that's running around is the chicken that's on our plate. But my mum back then, you know, vegetarianism was seen as being really cranky, and she was absolutely convinced that I would die of malnutrition. And it really took quite a few years to get to the point where I could say, actually, Mum, I really don't want to eat that anymore. And that was it until about 2019. I'd known Sherry for a couple of years, and Sherry was on your show a couple of weeks ago, wasn't she?
She was, yeah.
And I think she was the first vegan that I knew. And we'd had some conversations and you've probably heard this before, Luna, I was like, I'd love to be vegan, but I can't give up cheese.
Yes.
And obviously there's Veganuary in January every year. And I thought, well, maybe I can do it for 30 days. So I did it for 30 days and then I didn't look back.
Amazing.
It wasn't that difficult. It wasn't that challenging. And, you know, so just giving it a try was where I started.
Amazing. So did you go to Sherry's Veganuary workshops, or was she not doing them back then?
I think it was before she started running the Veganuary workshops, but I went to the workshops and supported a little bit afterwards. And it's always been really nice to help people start their journey. And every Veganuary I will share the posts sort of thing, and I will ask anybody, do they want help on their journey sort of thing. And I think it's a way of paying it forwards, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. So what did you turn to when you did your 30 days of vegan? What helped you through it?
I think signing up to the challenge helped me, because you get like a welcome pack, you get recipes, and obviously having been vegetarian for most of my life, it was just thinking, actually, well, I've got this veggie meal, how can I make that veggie meal completely vegan? So what can I exchange eggs for in baking? So I think that was something that was really useful, was to follow some vegan bakers online and find out a little bit more about using egg replacements or Aquafaba, or using sort of eggs or applesauce as substitute, not eggs or applesauce, applesauce
for eggs.
bananas as egg replacements.
For those that don't know, can you just tell us what Aquafaba is?
Right, Aquafaba, it sounds something really quite magical and mystical, and it can replace eggs. And it's actually the juice out of a tin of chickpeas, and you can make meringue with it. So I think in a way it really is quite magical, because who would have thought you could make meringues out of chickpea juice?
Yep. I remember like when I first heard the term aquafaba, because I used to bake a lot. I mean, admittedly, I don't really do it very much as a vegan, but when I was vegetarian, I used to bake all the time. And when I first heard the word aquafaba, I'm like, what on earth is this? Like, because I was part of a load of vegan groups, but back then I wasn't really like, I wasn't brave enough to actually ask. So eventually I figured out because somebody else asked, and they were like, oh, it's chickpea juice. I was like, what is this madness? So yeah, it's crazy, like, you know, an already vegan thing. And I love the word aquafaba. It's like just it's really fun to say.
It just sounds like something you should get a magic wand with. And aquafaba.
Yes. Yeah, it so does, definitely. So are there any like vegan bakers that you can recommend that helped you along your journey of like vegan baking?
The one that springs to mind is the minimalist baker. I can't remember her name, but I'll send you over a link so you can put it in the show notes later, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate that. So apart from cheese, what was it for you that you struggled to give up, if anything?
To be honest, it was cheese, because, and you probably get this a lot as well, eggs. When I was pregnant with my son, I went completely off eggs, the taste of it. So I had to be in an eggy mood to eat an egg, as it is. Obviously, things where it isn't obvious that it's eggy, like cake and stuff, I was fine with. But actually looking at an egg on a plate, it just used to turn my stomach.
Oh, interesting.
But that was only when I was pregnant. I used to eat loads of eggs up to being pregnant. And then it was cheese, because I don't think there's so far anything that has that sharp taste of a cheddar. So for me, it was about going without until my taste buds had changed, and then trying these things again. And that made it easy. But I think it's been really interesting in the last couple of years that veganism has absolutely exploded. There is absolutely no earthly reason to go without. If you fancy a burger, you can get yourself a good veggie burger. If you fancy, you know, fake Satan chicken like a KFC, you can get that. If you're not a junk food vegan, you can fall in love with cooking all over again. Just there's so many good bloggers and vloggers to follow out there. I quite like Bosch. They're a really inspirational pair. And the Happy Pear guys, have you ever come across those?
I have heard of them recently, but I haven't read their book yet.
Yeah, there's a lovely young lady who does Cheap Lazy Vegan, and she does I think she's Canadian, but I think she cooks Korean food sort of thing, but she does really cheap things on a budget sort of thing, because I think there is that belief, isn't it, that veganism, you have to rely on meat substitutes. You don't, and then it has to be expensive. It doesn't.
No, that's quite a biggie. I've found that people are worried about the expenses, and yeah, that's something like part of, for me, like I'm really trying to go whole food. Honestly, I haven't had that much success because I do love vegan junk food. But part of the reason is because, you know, I know on a whole food diet, you can eat so much cheaply, and I want to show people, you know, there is another way. It doesn't have to be really expensive.
The thing is, I think it's everything in moderation. If you fancy a burger, have a burger. If you fancy slowing your life right down and cooking from scratch and putting a lot of love into your food, do that. If you want to strike a balance, you know, you can knock up a stir fry in less than 10 minutes and have something that marries quick with easy and tasty.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a fan of stir fries. I never used to like them, but I love to put peanut butter in my stir fries. I really find that gives it a really good zing. Like, yeah, I like a good stir fry. So Is there anything that you have found yourself actually missing, like something you still haven't found that you used to love to eat?
Right. Butterscotch flavoured Angel Delight.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But that said, Sainsbury's do a toffee flavoured frozen ice lolly that tastes exactly like Butterscotch Angel Delight, but
Really?
it's frozen and it's dipped in chocolate. I think it's made by the Coconut Collective.
Oh yes, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. You are so right. I remember when I first had it, I was like, this tastes familiar. What does this taste like? And that's it. It's about a Scotch Angel Delight.
It's absolutely delicious.
Oh yeah, they're amazing. I agree. Okay. So how would you say that veganism has impacted your life?
Well, I think it marries up with a lot of things, including my spirituality and my values. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, I'm a pagan. And while I'm not a Wiccan, so I don't follow the Wiccan read, there's an idea that not doing harm to others is important in a pagan belief system, and walking gently on the earth. And I think that veganism allows me to do that. I'm not saying that I live a life where I do no harm to anybody else, because I think my very breathing in and out, my consuming products and resources has a potential to do harm. But I can try to do the least harm that is possible. So for me, reducing animal suffering and people suffering, I mean, I don't know if anybody's spoken to you about it before, but a lot of people working in the meat industry are quite often trafficked over, or they're people that have no other choice but to work in these places, and they don't get treated very well.
No.
And then if we look at the impact that animal agriculture has on the environment, and you know, one of the biggest things that you can do if you love the planet and you want to help the planet is to go vegan.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I'm glad that you brought up, you know, the suffering of the people that actually are doing the slaughter work, because a lot of people, they don't have compassion for those people. And I watched a documentary, I can't remember what it was, I have to see if I can try and find it and put it in the show notes, about the impact it has on people that work in a slaughterhouse. And actually it's something that I never really fully thought about or understood. Like, and that's sad too in itself. You know, obviously some people in the industry do a lot of harm and even more abuse than necessary, well, not necessary, but what other people may deem necessary. But actually the reason they do that is because of the trauma that they've had to deal with day in, day out. And trauma can cause us to do crazy things.
I mean, I don't think anybody grows up thinking, do you know what I really want to do with the rest of my life? Take the beaks off of chickens.
Yeah, exactly.
And having to do that day in, day out must damage you on such a deep level.
Yeah, definitely. And desensitize you, you know, as has it's happened for a lot of the world. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I know what goes on, but do you really? Like, I don't think that they do, because if you can watch that happening and still be so dissociated with it, like something's definitely not right there. You know, you have to put up a big wall to be able to just protect yourself from that, so it doesn't affect you emotionally.
Yeah, and I know if you've ever watched any of those documentaries like Kill It, Cook It, Eat It.
No, I was in that one.
Oh, when you watch something like that, and you know, people are connecting with animals, raising animals, and then they're given the choice, right, are you going to do this or not? A lot of people don't. And particularly a lot of children, when they make that connection. I mean, I know you've said before, haven't you, that we call meat different names to what we call animals.
Yeah.
but not all the time. So that is really interesting, that we're socialized to believe that this is acceptable and this is normal. And I do believe that one day we will look back on this time in a similar way that we look back on slavery, in that I cannot believe that the majority of people thought that it was okay to treat animals or other humans in this way.
Yeah, I really hope so too. I think, you know, I was saying this to somebody a little while ago. I do think one day the world will be vegan. I mean, a lot of people are like, no, but I think it will happen. It might be a long time from now, but I think humans are compassionate and smart enough to eventually, you know, pull themselves out of what they've lived in for so long to be normal, and to realize that actually it's not okay, you know, because as you said, like slavery, that was normalized, like people thought it was normal, and there was the few that were like in the time that were like, no, this is not okay, and would kind of fight against it and what have you. But yeah, I think veganism will happen the same way one day.
And I think it'll either be because of the morality of it or just the practicality. We cannot sustain the consumption of meats. And I know that some people have kind of sort of said, well, what will happen is we'll have to be eating bugs to get our protein. And, you know, given a choice between tasty, tasty bugs or, you know, maybe a veggie burger, I know what I would go for.
Yeah, for sure. They would. I don't imagine they would taste good. Like, just imagine, you know, things like worms. I can just imagine it would just taste like dirt. Like, who wants to be eating that? Gross. So, in terms of, as we're talking about all the slaughterhouse and what have you ever been involved in any activism yourself?
Well, this is a good question, and I had a thought about it, and I thought, well, do I or don't I? I'm not sure. And I came to the conclusion that I do really gentle vegan activism. So, like in my workplace, I have a huge tub of sweeties, and the entire tub of sweeties are safe for vegans. All of the groups that I run, I invite people to bring veggie and preferably vegan food to that. And nobody ever bats an eyelid at being asked to just amazing. Do that. It's amazing. But also because I see veganism and environmentalism as very much coexisting, I recently trained in de-escalation techniques for XR Rebellion.
Oh, okay.
So again, you know, I can't be an arrestable because of the line of work that I do, but I can go there and I can help de-escalate situations when they're getting a bit heated. And I think, you know, I like to think of it as cakeism, because I've got a couple of really good cake recipes now. So when I go to events and I've got a great big chocolate cake or a lovely lemon drizzle cake, and people look at me and go, oh, having a cheat day. And it's like, no, it's completely vegan. And it makes people stop and think, well, actually, maybe this is possible. Maybe this isn't as hard as I thought. And I think, you know, sometimes when you've got non-vegan friends, they can become quite shut down if you try and question them about, you know, what they do and how they do it, sort of thing. And I think when people feel attacked or judged or threatened in any way, they just dig their heels in.
Yeah.
So for me, and I do take my hat off to people who can go and do other forms of activism, because I definitely think that there's a place for all ways of communicating, because you'll get different results with different people.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people do need that kind of shock tactic sort of thing. But I found, just like Sherry didn't judge me when I was, you know, just vegetarian. She showed me some really tasty dishes. She said, well, actually, it's not too bad. But she didn't say like, right, I don't want to know you if you're not going to be vegan. She was just really gentle and accepting of where I am or where I was in my journey. So I quite often say to people, if you don't think you can be vegan, don't be vegan, be veggie. And if you don't think you can be veggie, don't be veggie. Start with a meat-free Monday. And it's just that one little step. It's that one little encouragement to open your mind up to these things.
Yeah. I read an article the other day that said apparently they've done some kind of study which shows that those people that start off with just like a meat-free Monday, within 5 years often end up being vegan.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very interesting. I don't know how they've done that study exactly, but
but it is amazing, isn't it? I mean, I read a statistic the other day that the sale of vegan foods this year has grown exponentially to 400%.
Oh wow.
And
incredible.
Definitely people are changing. People are more open to it. I mean, to the point, I think sometimes it bites itself on the bottom. I don't know if you've ever had a Beyond Meat burger, but that's obviously made for non-vegans to try and tempt them over. But it's so like me, I can't eat it because it's got like the beetroot in, and when you cut into it, it looks like it's bleeding, and it's like, no, that's not for me. But anything that gets people over.
Yeah, exactly. I had a Beyond burger like when I lived in the States, but it was definitely overdone. So I was fine with it. But then when I see it in the store, because you can buy it, it puts me off. Like I was always a bit funny with red meat, even when I was a meat eater, which wasn't for very long, but I was always a bit funny. But like it's weird too, because even now, like there's certain things, like I have not been able to eat mince as a vegan because the thought of it just makes me cringe. And burgers I'm not so keen on anymore, like for some reason. But then I have things like chicken nuggets or sausages, and I'm on it like all the time. So I just find it really interesting that, like, you know, there's certain things that I'm like, oh no, but other things I'm like, oh yeah, I love that.
I mean, it was quite interesting. A couple of years ago, I went to Wagamama's, and they were doing like the ramen bowl with like the fake egg in it.
Oh yeah.
And it didn't taste like an egg by any way, shape or form, sort of thing. But it was interesting. It had a really interesting set of textures. So I had it to try it. And, we won't always like all of the things that come out, and I know it divides the community, doesn't it, into going into, mainstream restaurants, because they are still supporting the meat industry with their other products. But I mean, my stance on that is it's controlled by demand. So if we are making demand for vegan products, we're going to get more vegan products. If there are more vegan products, we're going to get more people trying vegan products. And then hopefully, like you said with that study, more people will start that journey to becoming vegan.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely, I think it's important. I used to be one of those people that was like very anti like McDonald's, KFC, Burger King. Like I went on strike and I stopped touching them. But after a while, when I started to understand, the importance of demand. I mean, I still don't choose to go there, but if I'm with friends and they go there, then I'll buy something. But before I was like really like, no, I hadn't been to McDonald's for about 10 years. I was like, so strict with it. But now I understand the high demand thing. Like it makes total sense. Like, that's what we need to do to change things. We can't just go and rely on only vegan things. Like, I mean, obviously we need to support them, like local businesses and that. But I do think it's important that we create that high demand, because otherwise there's going to be no chance of it happening.
And I mean, we are so lucky where we live. We've got some absolutely fabulous local independent vegan restaurants and takeaways and stuff. So probably, given the choice, I would much rather go to Peck or Dr. Legum's than to McDonald's. So, you can definitely see an argument for both. And, our vegan pound is worth quite a lot to people. So if we can be supporting local independent retailers, yeah, that would definitely be your first option. But supply and demand is a very important aspect.
Absolutely. So that is the end of our interview. So before we go, I've got one more question for you. And that is for the listeners that are not quite vegan yet, but they're interested. What's one piece of advice that you would give them?
Right. It's going back to the cheese again. Do not, absolutely do not eat any vegan cheese until you're about 6 months into your journey. Forget what cheese tasted like, because otherwise you're just going to think it tastes of sadness and lies. So far, the best vegan cheese that I have found is the Applewood smoked cheese, because it's kind of got that texture and flavour of Edam. If anybody finds anything that tastes like a strong, sharp cheddar, please get in touch with Luna, and Luna can pass that on to me, because that's what I really missed. But aside from that, it's that idea of do veganism imperfectly. And that might say a bit strange, but it's that idea. I would rather we had 5 million imperfect vegans than 50,000 who were doing it perfect. You will slip up because willpower drops. You might slip up accidentally because you haven't checked a label or a product's change sort of thing. I can't remember what it was that I got caught out on. It was Jammy Dodgers, because they were vegan, they changed the recipe, they weren't vegan, and then they changed it again. And I'd been eating Jammy Dodgers for a little while before I realised, and I absolutely cut myself up over it. But, you know, do the best that you can. And I think if you do have more of an intentional slip, sit with yourself and sort of say, why did that happen? You know, was it that, you know, perhaps you hadn't done your homework properly and you went to a restaurant and it wasn't actually really going to be catering for your needs, so you maybe had to have something veggie or something like that. But be gentle with yourself, because none of us are perfect all of the time, and it's easy to get discouraged and convince yourself that it's too hard and just give up completely.
Yeah, that's such an important thing, I think. You know, we all make mistakes. I've been vegan for 3 years almost now, and I went gluten-free for a while, and I bought bread completely oblivious to think, you know, it might have something in it I can't have, and it had egg in it. Fortunately, something told me to check after I had like the first slice, so then I just gave it away to somebody I knew ate egg. But yeah, it does happen, you know, as you say, things change. You got to be careful, but you know, there's no point beating yourself up about it, because what's done is done. And actually, to have compassion for yourself even when you make mistakes, that's what's going to help you to be better next time. You know, just going down that spiral, it's very easy to go down that spiral when you beat yourself up, to then making yourself feel like crap and then not wanting to bother anymore. And you know, it's not about us.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when you know better, you do better. And if you've worked out that, you know, you I had a friend who was very devout vegetarian, except when she'd been drinking. Well, then she'd want a kebab. And we kind of sort of talked about that, and we sort of said, well, you know, what can you do about that? And the thing was to, you know, make a swap and get chips. But to make that commitment to herself and to her veganism before she went out, and then, you know, we could hold each other accountable.
Yeah, it definitely helps, doesn't it? Sports circle is definitely a big thing. Well, thank you so much for all your words of wisdom and sharing your journey with us. It's been wonderful.
It's been lovely to come on. It's really good work that you're doing. I think everybody's stories are absolutely fascinating, and it's good, as you said, support is really important, because if you ever are, you know, struggling or needing a little bit of inspiration, what you do on Vegan Bloomers and the community you've got, you're always going to find someone that's going to be able to help you and inspire you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I'm for anyone watching, like, I'm always here for a chat. you know, you can send me a message on Facebook and I will reply. You know, I will find your message because I know where the hidden folder is. So, and yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, like vegan or not. You know, I want to be here for as many people that need me. So yeah, that's kind of why I created this. Like, yeah. So before we completely say goodbye, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to contact you, how can they get in touch, Jenny?
There's a couple of places that I hang out. So my business is All Heart Led. If you just search for me on Facebook, you'll find me. If you're more interested in the paganism side of things that I do, you can contact me again on Facebook via Kent Goddess Group.
Wonderful. And I'm going to do a little plug in for you as well, because I am aware that you have an amazing podcast. So for anyone that's interested in your paganism journey, what is your podcast so they can check it out?
Right, you can find the Facebook group for the Wheel, which is where we post each weekly episode, and it's at the Wheel Podcast. But also you will find it on all of the good places that you listen to your podcast. So we're on Apple, we're on Amazon, we're on Spotify, we're on iTunes. So any place that you listen to podcasts, you'll find us.
And I can vouch for that because I use Stitcher, which is something that not a lot of people know about, and it's on there too. So I was very happy about that. Well, brilliant. Again, thank you so much, Jenny, for sharing with us about your journey. And thank you guys for watching and listening. Hopefully this has been inspirational for you. And if you're vegan already, then please feel free to get in touch with me. You can find me on Facebook, Luna Bloomer, or you can email me at veganbloomers@gmail.com, and then you can be our next star vegan. Thank you again for watching, everybody. Much love.
Bye-bye.